So picture this. You're at a coffee shop, someone is meticulously arranging the sugar packets into a perfect symmetrical line. Then they laugh and say, "Ugh, I'm so OCD about this stuff." You've probably heard it, or maybe you've even said it. It's a phrase that's become incredibly common, a shorthand for being neat, organized, particular. It's used to describe everything from color-coding a bookshelf to wanting your desk to be tidy. This casual use turns a serious mental health condition into a personality quirk, something almost desirable, like being a perfectionist. It's a way to signal you're detail-oriented, that you have high standards, all in a cute, self-deprecating way. This phenomenon isn't just limited to OCD. Someone might call an ambitious friend Type A, or say they themselves are Type A. Type A becomes a badge of honor, a sign you're a go-getter, a high achiever destined for success. We've turned clinical terms into social accessories, part of the vocabulary we use to build personal brands. It's almost like collecting personality traits from a menu. The problem is this detaches terms from their much more serious meanings, linguistic drift that erodes emotional and clinical weight. When OCD just means, "I like things neat," it loses the power to describe the debilitating intrusive thoughts and compulsions of the real disorder. And when Type A just means ambitious, it papers over chronic stress, impatience, and increased health risks. This transformation isn't harmless. It creates a damaging misunderstanding. We're in a strange cultural moment, more open to talking about mental health, but also trivializing the very language needed for those conversations. That casual adoption of clinical terms as quirky adjectives creates a fog of misinformation. It makes it harder to understand what these conditions truly entail, and harder for those suffering to be taken seriously. The first step to fixing this is to understand what we're actually talking about when we use these words. Let's get clinical for a minute, because it's important. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, is not a preference for tidiness. It's a serious and often debilitating anxiety disorder. The O in OCD stands for obsessions. Intrusive thoughts, unwanted images, recurring urges. These aren't just worries about whether your desk is clean. They can be terrifying thoughts about harming a loved one, persistent fears of contamination that feel overwhelmingly real. The anxiety they generate is immense, a constant churning dread that doesn't just go away if you try to ignore it. To cope with this intense anxiety, individuals with OCD engage in the C part, compulsions. These are repetitive behaviors or mental acts that the person feels driven to perform. The compulsion is a desperate attempt to neutralize the obsession or prevent a feared outcome. Someone with a fear of contamination might wash their hands until they are raw and bleeding. Someone haunted by intrusive thoughts might check the stove dozens of times, unable to trust their memory. These are not quirky habits. They are time-consuming, life-altering rituals that a person feels powerless to stop. Now let's talk about the Type A personality, coined in the 1950s by cardiologists Meyer Friedman and Ray Rosenman. They were studying the link between personality and heart disease. Ambition, competitiveness, impatience, sense of constant time urgency. It's about a relentless, often hostile drive that can lead to chronic stress. This isn't a recipe for success. It's a risk factor for hypertension and coronary artery disease. So, when we look at the clinical definitions, the gap between popular usage and reality is staggering. A diagnosis of OCD, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM-5, requires that these obsessions or compulsions are time-consuming, taking up more than an hour a day, and cause significant distress, impair social functioning, impair occupational functioning, impair other important areas of functioning. This is not a fun quirk. In the digital age, the trivialization of mental health conditions has found a powerful amplifier. Social media, Instagram, TikTok, X. These platforms are flooded with content that perpetuates misunderstandings. Countless memes appear. Memes that equate OCD with the satisfaction of a perfect pattern or a single tile out of place. Those posts go viral, racking up millions of views and shares. They feel relatable. Everyone likes organization to some degree. Clinical terms turned into marketable slogans. Obsessive Christmas disorder, I'm not bossy. I just have type A leadership skills. Psychologists and advocates watch with concern. Dr. Elspeth Bell, clinical psychologist, notes, when a term like OCD is used to describe a desirable trait like being organized, it creates a fundamental misunderstanding of the suffering involved. Let's contrast two very different scenarios. First, there's Sarah, a graphic designer who proudly calls herself so OCD at work. Her files are impeccably organized, her desk clear, she enjoys aligning objects. It's seen as a strength. Now, consider David, who has been clinically diagnosed with OCD. His life looks very different. Intrusive fears of contamination drive hours of washing until his skin is cracked and bleeding. Trapped in checking rituals, he's late, he loses work, time stolen. The chasm between Sarah's experience and David's is immense. When we use OCD as a stand-in for meticulous, we equate a neat desk with someone's living hell. The negative effects of this widespread misuse go beyond just hurting feelings. It creates barriers to empathy, delays diagnosis, and traps people in cycles of intrusive thoughts and compulsions. The sanitized version isolates those who need support most. The path forward is using language with clarity, precision, and compassion. Instead of saying "I'm so OCD," say what you mean. If you relate to intrusive thoughts, overwhelming anxiety, or compulsions you can't control, please know you are not alone and real help is available. A diagnosis is not a status symbol. It's a tool to guide treatment and recovery. Seek help, don't seek status. Let's reserve these terms for those who truly need them and offer support instead of misunderstanding.